Alright guys, today I'm going to be overclocking my KS0 Ultra and I'm going to show you all the hardware mods you need to do as well as how to flash the firmware so that you can get basically double the yield of KASPA with your same miner. Based on the math I've done, it always makes sense to do the overclocking, assuming you don't care about losing the warranty on your device. You're going to ROI sooner and you're going to have more KASPA yield. You're gonna get the most out of the hardware that you've already bought, and even with the increased price for the extra parts that you need to do the overclocking, you're still gonna come out ahead. So let's take a look at what parts you need to do the overclock itself. Obviously, you need an Ice River KS0 Ultra, and we're gonna be using the Tswift mining firmware today. The next thing you'll need is some fan shrouds. Mine have not arrived yet, but I recommend getting these from the Technicals.
On the Technicals. See you next time.
He has an Etsy shop where you can get 2 shrouds for $16. So I'll have a link to that down below, as well as all these other items that you can get from Amazon. The next thing you'll need is copper heat sinks for the MOSFETs, as well as thermal glue to actually glue those heat sinks to the MOSFET chips. Then you will need a high-speed fan, a 120 millimeter. This fan will basically attach to your shroud and blow air through the side of the KS0 Ultra once we remove this panel. I'm only going to be putting 1 shroud onto the end of this KS0 Ultra because I don't want to use 2 fans per KS0 Ultra. That's going to use a lot of power, and obviously with anything mining, you're trying to get away with the lowest amount of power possible. So I'm going to use 1 shroud and 1 fan per KS0 Ultra. The next thing you need is a good screwdriver kit so that you can get into this device and make all the modifications that you need to make. I love this one. It's super budget, so I always recommend this one to people. And lastly, one of the most important things is an upgraded laptop power supply. And this is a 230 watt version, and this is going to allow us to overclock all the way up to 618 gigahash. And the good thing about this power supply is you can run it off 240 volt because it takes a standard C13 plug. So all of this will be down in the description. Let's go ahead and start tearing this bad boy apart and doing our modifications. Keep in mind that once you remove this sticker, you're going to void your warranty. So just be sure that that's something that you want to do. I'm going to go ahead and peel this off and then start unscrewing these screws. Okay, side plate is removed. Now we need to do the same on the other side. So just to give you guys an idea of what we're going to be doing here, we're going to be taking both side plates off, and then we're going to be removing these 2 fans and actually putting them on the outside of the case so that they're not blocking the airflow that goes through the ASIC itself. I'm planning on, in this video, probably doing the 560 gigahash, but if everything goes very well, then I may go ahead and just do the 618 gigahash version, because you don't actually need to install the heat sinks on the MOSFETs for the 516 gigahash version, but I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway because it costs very little. One thing to watch out for is make sure you're using the correct size bit for these screws. This bottom right screw, I almost stripped to the point where I was not able to get it out. So you're going to see me switch bits here in a second to one that fits these screws a little bit better, because the last thing you want to do is strip one of these screws to the point that you can't actually get it out. That would be pretty troublesome. Moving on from that, let's talk about the cost of all these components and how much it's going to cost you to do the budget version of this versus all the way to 618 gigahash. So for the budget version, really the only thing you need is a power supply, the 230 watt version for $35, and a fan and a shroud kit. So the fan I've got listed at $10. If you're doing the budget version, you don't need a super high speed fan. And the shroud, I have it as free because you can 3D print it. So for the budget version, you're really only looking at $45 and you're almost at a 50% increase in hash rate because you're going from 400 to 562 gigahash. If you wanted to go to 618 plus, you have to buy pads and paste, so it's going to end up being closer to $60 to $65. Okay, now that I've got it unscrewed, I need to take this plate off, and it's a little bit stuck on there because it's stuck to the thermal pad. So just lightly kind of pry this off, double check that all the screws are off, and they are, and it should pop off here, but it is really stuck on there. Okay. Now watch out because you do have two fan cords here. So you need to make sure that you unplug those. All right, can move that away. So this is where you'll see some people replace the thermal pad and also take the board out and replace the thermal paste. I'm not going to do that because I'm not planning on overclocking it super high. And you don't need to do that on 562 gigahash version, and it's only highly recommended for the 618 plus. So these little black chips right here, those are the MOSFETs. So basically that is what we're going to be thermal gluing these things onto. And the only reason we had to open this up, besides that, we're also going to unscrew these fans and put them on the other side. So I'll give you guys a nice close-up view of what this board looks like. Pretty interesting. Okay, so I'm going to set this aside for now, and let's go ahead and unscrew these fans so that we can mount them onto the outside. Okay, so take these away. These are going to be like this. I still have our fan shroud on top of it, and then we should just be able to screw down from the top right here. Yeah, I'm not sure if you're going to be able to put these fan shrouds on because if you go in from the back side, the screw does not protrude enough to latch on to this. And obviously, if you go in from the back side, there's no way to put the fan shroud on. But that's fine. These are tiny fans. They're not going to hurt anyone. And really, that fan shroud is not needed. So we'll go ahead and attach the rest of these screws. Now, one thing I want to make sure is that I have this orientation correct on these fans. So let me actually double check that on my one that's still. So basically you should not see the sticker on the outside. So I think I've got this one correct, thankfully. Okay, this is the finished product. It's close, but yes, they will have enough room to reach the header. All right, now it's time to put our heat sinks onto our little MOSFET chips right here. So we need to get out our heat sinks and our thermal glue. And the directions on the thermal glue say to use as thin a layer as possible. And I'm gonna put it directly onto the heat sink itself. And then I wish I had some sort of tweezers or something to actually put this on the chip, but I think I'm just gonna have to do it with my fingers. So let's get a paper towel down here. We need 4 of these out. And then I've also got a spatula that I can use to kind of scrape this out if I need to. Okay, so let's just use our spatula. Okay, that should honestly be plenty. And then we can smooth that out. Now this thermal glue is going to take 24 hours to cure. So it's going to suck not having this thing running for a full day, but hey, better safe than sorry since it's going to be running for the next year straight. Okay, that looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and put those on. Ideally, you would have some tweezers for this, but I'm just going to try to pick them up and put them on by hand. Okay, get nice, good contact. Move on to the next one. All right, that's looking pretty good. Okay, that looks pretty good. So that's about ready to just sit and dry. So now we need to get this bad boy installed back on, and I think I'm just going to plug, well, we'll go ahead and plug this one in first, and then see if I can get this one in. Okay, and now can I, so okay, screw holes are lined up. Heat sinks are making contact with the thermal pads. That's good. So now we can just go ahead and screw this down tight to make sure everything has good contact. And then this should be ready to get the heat shroud, obviously in 24 hours once everything dries, and then it should be ready to go. So let's start screwing these screws back in. And same as anything else, I would do them in a cross pattern to get equal pressure. Okay, now we have a modded KS0 Ultra ready to put our heat shroud on this side because you want the barrel plug to be on the side that the fresh air is coming in on. So once we get those in, I'll be ready to turn this on. But for now, I probably shouldn't put it on its side since those copper heat sinks are drying. Okay, both of them are drying now. They have all the heat sinks in place. Fans are on the outside. So I'm going to now plug my C13 cable into these two power supplies, remove these two old power supplies, and I'm putting those wires in them. So I'll get everything set up, and then tomorrow, once I have my heat shrouds and these are dried, we'll go ahead and flash the firmware on and see what hash rate we can get. Okay, these are plugged into the 240 volt PDU. My fans for the shroud are ready to be plugged in. They just need to be screwed once I get the shrouds in place. And then this will turn on to cool them. And those fans are adjustable, so I can turn the speed up and down. I don't want it to be super loud, but I'm gonna crank them pretty high so nothing gets damaged. And then these will power the KS0s, which will sit right here and right here. So I will see you guys tomorrow once everything is dry. All right, so I mentioned at the beginning of this video that you can get a $16 shroud kit from the Technicals Etsy, but if you want to go for a more high quality option, I recommend getting a shroud from Fruition Designs. They were nice enough to send me over one, and this is the one that I'm going to be using. So let me open this up and I'll show you guys why I ended up going this route. These are a little bit more pricey, but they come with some benefits. So the fans are much more quiet than your standard high-speed fans. And with me filming down in this garage all the time, I obviously want the audio quality to be pretty good. So I want a quieter one. And this would also be good if you wanted to have this inside during the winter, say in a family room, but you still wanted to have it overclocked, then maybe this would be okay for that, depending on what sound level you can tolerate. So this comes with two shrouds, and it's meant for basically 2 shrouds to go onto one KS0 with an intake and an exhaust fan, but I'm actually just going to use 1 shroud for each KS0 since I have 2 and I need 2 shrouds. So there's the first shroud, and here is the second. Nice and bubble wrapped. So you can see that these actually go together. And your KS0 would be in the middle of that with an intake and an exhaust. But we're just going to use them as 1 from each. And this is pretty nice that this actually has holes that you can poke out for your cables. So you only have to poke out the amount of cables you have. That's something that's different from the ones that I've seen on the 3D printing sites. And the last item in the box, this is heavy, is our 2 fans, and these are AC Infinity. So this is actually just a box straight from AC Infinity. We got our shrouds, and this is the Axial 1238, and if I remember correctly, these are actually adjustable. So we'll look at so these actually have a adjustable speed controller on them, so that with me only running at 560, I won't have to turn these up very high. And also these are ran just straight off 120 volts, so that these fans should never die. I was a little nervous when I was going to use the server power supply that the fans could potentially die and the miner overheats, but that's not going to happen if they're running straight off 120 volt. Well, they're all mounted up. The only issue is they're going to be sitting on their sides with this sideways. I should have noticed that, but oh well, no big deal. These fans, this is their power cable right here. So honestly, when you calculate in the cost of 2 of these AC Infinity fans, the price of the whole kit really doesn't seem that bad, but definitely if you want to go the budget option, I'd stick to 3D printing or going with the technicals option. So we want our barrel plug to be the side that's getting all of the fresh air. So we'll set this right here gently because we're resting on the power cable for those fans. And then this will just slide down over it. Quick tip, if you are using the Fruition Designs Shroud, do not put the KS0 Ultra fans on the outside of the device because as you can see here, it blocks the shroud from fitting onto the device and it can actually damage those fans. And the Tswift overclocks will not work if those fans are damaged, so watch out for that. Basically like so, and that's what it's going to look like. So I need to figure out which of these I need to knock out. So since the barrel plug's up here, I need to knock out this right here. So I'm going to do that on both of these real quick. Okay. So I need to feed this barrel plug through here as I put this on. So I need to actually unbundle this and get a little bit more slack. We'll go ahead and stick this through here. My little thing is too big to fit through there. So I'm honestly going to drill this out just a tad bit bigger so that I can fit that through. Okay, I've got it drilled out a little bit. Now let's see if this will fit in here. Perfect, okay. So now I can go ahead and plug in my barrel plug. Make sure it's still plugged in well, and it is. Okay, the miner lights are on, and then I want to take my fan power cord and bring that over here. And what side is that on? Down here, so feed that through there. Okay. So there you can hear the noise level. It's pretty quiet, honestly. I'm gonna crank it all the way up. Wow, so that's max. These fans are honestly pretty dang quiet at max. If you want to know how I'm widening those holes just a little bit like this, just twirling it around in there and it does the job real nice. All right, guys, we finally have all the hardware upgrades complete. If you're still with me, it's been a long video and it's going to get longer. Thank you, and consider subscribing if you're still here. So, I've got both my miners pulled up now. They're on the 80 and 81 IP addresses, and both of them are mining. Accepted shares 19, accepted shares 12. So everything looks good. I didn't break anything doing those modifications, so that's always good to see them boot up without issue. Now, what I want to do is get some before and after pictures of what my chip temps are using this Ice River monitor tool. So let's check both of these really quickly. And one thing I did notice is the temperatures 45C, 36C are very cool. These were like 70 to mid 60s before those fan upgrades, so already much, much cooler. That's why I need to set this to KS0 Ultra. Let's try that again. Okay, so these are all the chips, and I'm gonna go ahead and just screenshot this, save it. See all my thumbnail headshots. And we'll do one more, 80. All right, now that we've got that done, one of the first things you're gonna do is make sure this Ice River monitor tool is closed. And this is the Tswift README. So there's a lot of good information in here. You wanna read this extremely closely. A lot of it is just saying don't go up to 700G unless you're a total expert. Do not power it with a server power supply. There was a YouTuber, The Mining Cabinet, who actually burned a barrel plug the other day doing that, so definitely don't do that. Power supply to 230, we did that. Okay, so upgrade instructions, close Ice River monitor tool, we've done that. If your device is running third-party firmware, ours is not, then you have to revert back to the original firmware. We don't need to do that. All right, step 3, upload desired overclock firmware. Start with the lower hash rate version to ensure stability, then move up to the higher hash rate versions after. Do not start at the highest one. So 562 is low enough that I am going to go just directly to 562. But there's some other things in here is that you want to try the low voltage first and check our hash rate. And if it's good, then we can stick with that one. Otherwise, we need to go to the medium voltage. And lastly, we would need to go to the high voltage. You're going to get the best efficiency at the low voltage. So hopefully that works. So this is the file that you will download, and we are going to be using this 562L first, and this is just on my desktop. So we will do the 81 first. I'm not going to do them both immediately in case something goes wrong, but we'll just go to firmware upgrade, select file, and we are going to go to, and we are going to do 562L. Open and zoom this out a little bit, and then we're just going to hit update. I'm pretty nervous. Even though this is the newer versions where you technically can't brick your miner, I'm still a little nervous. Never done this before, but hopefully it'll end up okay. Okay, let's hit update. Once this does its thing and we can log back into it, it says to restart it again, and then after that second restart, that is when we will set our pool and everything. So let's see what this does. Okay, it says operation succeeded. Let's refresh this and confirm restarting the mining machine. Yes, we do want to do that, so we will let it restart. Okay, so we should not be able to get to the screen right now because it's in the process of restarting. So let's let this do its thing. I'm going to give it at least 5 minutes before I start freaking out or anything, so we will let it restart, and hopefully it just is immediately mining once I set our pool info. I didn't even have to refresh the page. It actually popped right back up. So obviously it's going to take a little bit to see the hash rate and everything. But the good thing is it has popped back up, and we're also seeing this fan speed normal. So that was kind of a glitch with the previous Ice River firmware for the KS0 Ultra, is that your fan speed was always saying abnormal unless you set your fan speed and restarted it basically every single time. So that means that we are on the new firmware because that is working. And look at that, we've even got a little Tswift picture in here. That's hilarious. We can see our fan speeds. That's good as well. I'm gonna let this just do its thing for a few minutes and see what hash rate we're at before I go ahead and do the second one, just to be safe. But real quick, let's go ahead and check out our chips. Since now that this is running again and we've already switched the firmware over, we're okay to open up that Ice River monitor tool again. Compare that to the pictures we took beforehand. So that would be this one right here. And we are seeing the clock is definitely higher. The temps are only slightly higher. I'm looking for anything else of information in here. Far, so good. It's been a little bit of time, and you can see my 5-minute hash rate is at 635 gigahash, which is crazy. So obviously you guys know hash rate goes up and down, but I have a feeling if it's at 635, then I'm probably going to be right around that 560 range on average, which means the low voltage firmware is likely going to work on this machine. I also went ahead and upgraded my second one. No issues there as well. It's starting to hash, doesn't have any accepted shares yet. But let's say that this one doesn't get up to 560, it's maybe around the 520 mark. At that point, I would want to go into the firmware and use the medium voltage one. And if that still doesn't work, then I would use the high hash rate version 1. And look at the README to determine how to do that. It is as easy as just going to the firmware page and selecting the next one. I talked to Tswift, and you don't need to revert back to the default firmware before going between low voltage and high voltage and medium voltage. You can just go directly to them. So it seems like everything went good, and I'm very happy with these results. Essentially, I'm going to go from 800 gigahash of KASPA hash rate to about 1120. Essentially almost buying an extra KS0 Ultra for the price of like $120, and maybe even slightly less than that depending on what mods you choose to do. I'm going to have a video in the future determining if overclocking is right for you. Personally, I think it is, but it does depend on where you think KASPA the coin is going to go. I'm not going to show the wattages in this video. It's already too long, but let me know down below if you guys have any questions and I can help you out in this process. Don't forget, I have a modern mining Discord that if you become a channel member, you can join that. And we're always talking about overclocking and things like this. So check that out. And while you're at it, check out some of my other videos. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.